Hey, Matt.
Hello.
So here we are. It's almost Valentine's Day. So I'm kind of wondering if the socks are going to reflect a Valentine. Nope. Okay, never mind. So if you haven't been with us before, Matt is, he calls it the shoeless therapist, but I think he should be the sock full therapist. That's my
The
take
sock
on
full
that. But
therapist.
mhm,
Well, right at this point, I've already done the branding, right? So you guys can
yes.
find me on Instagram, the Shoeless Therapist, and I do these little short videos. Um, and people have always called me that. They're like, "Oh, you're the Shoeless Therapist," but you're right. It's not just that I don't wear shoes; it's that I have fun socks. And it's terrible. I didn't even think about Valentine's Day. I don't. And so I was like, I looked in my drawer this morning and I thought, oh, those would be fun ones to wear. And so I'm going to
Okay,
show, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh,
Oh, fun.
wait. I always
Yeah.
hate that, like
That's
the
all
blue bit.
pastries and
No,
right?
it's all
Oh,
sushi.
no, it's sushi. Oh, it looked
Well,
like
yeah, so
see, like
you can
I
see
go to sweet, so I'm going to go to
you
like it's
go
a
you
pastry.
see the chopsticks
Yes,
here.
now I see the chopsticks.
There's California
Yes.
rolls. I'm not
Yeah.
exactly sure what this or that is, but
Yeah.
it's all
Yeah.
sushi.
Yeah. It looked like a little chocolate with pastry thing to me when I first saw it. But
Oh,
I'm
totally. And
I'm gonna
I can
I'm gonna hold
appreciate
to the
that.
pastry. Yeah.
I would probably like chocolate, like dark chocolate, especially better than sushi. But
Yes.
I enjoy sushi. Like, there's good sushi.
There is, and I always need someone. This is one of my, I'm not adept at sushi, so I need someone who actually knows what they're doing to go do that so we order correctly. So that's not one of
Yeah,
those I'm brave enough to do on my own. So anyway, but we digress.
we totally
So I
digress.
there was something, oh, I like if you missed it, Scott, my colleague Scott and I did a webinar on Wednesday on the 12 steps, and we both feel really good about that one because it's kind of like, it's so hard to navigate the 12 steps. And so it was one of those where, there's so many S groups, like with AA, it's like if you've got alcohol, you go to AA, easy. With S groups, how do you even figure that out? So we did a webinar, kind of unpacked it all and gave some questions to the myths and questions about it. So like all of these webinars, it's posted on the Seeking Integrity site, and I would invite you if there's any confusion about should I go, how would I find one, whatever, check that out. So that could be a useful resource. All of this stuff is resources. So, and speaking of resources, Matt, what do you got for us today?
We are going to talk about. So I think we've the last two ones we've talked about, like the four horsemen of the
Hmm.
apocalypse, and
Hmm.
so today we're going to hit the third one because we did the other two.
Yes, we did too. Yes.
And this one is honestly one of my, I don't know, it's a weird thing to call it one of my favorites, and it's because I think it happens the most unintentionally.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
that's a weird way of like saying it, the most unintentionally. But so we're going to talk about defensiveness. Now the way that Gottman describes defensiveness is he calls it like victimizing yourself to ward off a perceived attack and reverse the blame. And if so, the way I see defensiveness most commonly happen, sure, there's victimizing of yourself. There's blaming of the other. But the most common defensiveness that I see is one partner will say to the other, I'm hurt. You did or didn't do this thing, and I'm in pain, and it's your fault, right? Which if you just slow down that statement by itself, it's them saying the fact that they're even telling you is them saying, I'm in pain and I was wondering if you could help me because I think you did this thing and I need comfort, I need soothing, right? And it's a total opportunity for connection if we can listen to the way that the fact that the person's even telling us about their hurt is an open door to connection. So, but inevitably, one, the person speaking to us doesn't know how to, and this is like a tough one. It can be helpful if we own our perception and we own our pain. So if I say to my partner, So I noticed that when, here's an example, actually. I was just using this morning. Somebody will say, "You're yelling. You need to stop yelling." And it sounds really strange, but you can actually bring down the defensiveness by somebody or of somebody by just saying, "I'm really struggling right now. I'm hearing yelling. So whether you're yelling or not, I'm hearing yelling and I just want to shut down. I want to pull away. I want to walk out of the room. And I know that if I walk out, you're going to feel hurt." Right? Owning that I perceive yelling, owning that I perceive hurt. I'm not talking about you or your intentions. I'm not even telling you what you're doing. I'm telling you how I'm perceiving this experience. That alone can help to bring down defensiveness. I found it super effective, but that's like high level skill. And so, again, if my partner comes to me and says, "You're yelling," right? I may not agree with my partner, but if I can tune in and go, "Oh my gosh, you're hearing me yelling. No wonder why you're upset," right? If I can take responsibility for as much of it as possible, I can be like, "Okay, you're hearing me yelling. That's a little confusing, but I don't want you to feel like you're being yelled at. Like, let's figure out what's going on here," right? So if I can own as much as I can, that helps to get rid of defensiveness. But most of the time, that's not what I do. My response is going to be, "I'm not yelling. You always say that I'm yelling, and this isn't yelling." Well, that I'm now not feeling heard and understood, and so I'm defending myself. Most of the time when defensiveness comes up, it's because we don't feel understood. And I'm going to explain to you how you're wrong, Tammy, and you just don't understand me. And if you understood me, you wouldn't think I'm yelling, right? That's what we do. And that's where most of the defensiveness occurs. So if we want to learn to change that, we have to realize, one, I'm not going to explain myself until Tammy asks what my perspective is. If Tammy comes to me, if she's vulnerable enough and comes to me and says, "Matt, you hurt me and it feels like you're yelling," I'm just going to sit in that space. "Okay, so I hurt you. You feel like I'm yelling. What else? Tell me more about it. Help me understand your perspective." The moment I start explaining myself is immediately picked up as defensiveness. And I will often say, and I've said this in my own relationships, I'll say, "Hey, I'm not feeling understood. And I find myself wanting to explain myself. But if I do, you're going to feel like I'm dismissing you and I'm being defensive." And so that's me taking ownership for how I'm going to impact you. And it's a beautiful thing. So that's probably one of the biggest ways of getting rid of defensiveness in a relationship, is owning that I don't feel heard. I want to explain myself, but I don't want you to feel dismissed. I don't want you to feel like you don't matter to me. So the anecdote really is, take responsibility. If we've hurt our partner, obviously accept responsibility. If you know, like, "Oh my gosh, whether I intended to or not, I can totally see how I hurt you. Um, I need, I'm sorry that you were hurt. I'm sorry for my part in that." If you can own it, take as much responsibility as possible. It doesn't mean you have to take responsibility for something you don't feel you did. And that's something I think people really struggle with. "Well, I didn't mean to hurt them." Okay, so then don't take responsibility for intending to hurt them. Take responsibility. "Well, I can see when I didn't stop at the store," and this is something silly, but we could go to something much more serious. "I can see that when I didn't call you when I leave work, even though I've talked about doing that, and I regularly do that, I can totally see why that freaked you out. You got scared. You weren't sure where I was. I was running late. And so I am so sorry that my behavior hurt you." I don't have to be like, "I intentionally didn't call you because I wanted to hurt you." And sometimes that's what our partner is saying to us. So take responsibility for as much as you can and just validate their hurt and pain. And typically, once you do that and you're able to even explain to your partner, I never wanted you to be hurt, but I can totally see why you were. Usually at that part, once your partner feels heard, they will actually say to you, well, what did you mean? Why did you do it? What happened? And then we have an opportunity to explain ourselves without going into defensiveness. So I can totally kind of stop it there for now.
Well,
But
I have a couple of things I want to ask you about because, like,
yeah.
at one point you said, "I'm a little confused about that," and I thought that almost feels like dismissive. It's like you're
Oh,
nuts, like that. You know what I mean? Like
oh, yeah.
like I'm, you're hurt and I'm confused about, or that I'm yelling. That's what it was about, the yelling. I'm really confused about that, and it almost feels like,
It could,
like, like
well,
that's be careful how you say it. You know?
yeah, and here's the hard part, and this is what makes this so difficult. I always try and teach my couples, like, you want to try and understand the concepts and put them into practice, but don't ever think in your mind that, like, I'm saying it just right. Really, you have to roll with it, right? So like if you said, well, that feels really dismissive, I'm gonna go there and stay there. Whoa. So my confusion feels dismissive. Tammy, tell me more. Well, it just feels
Like you're
like,
saying I'm crazy because how could I
yeah.
possibly be yelling? I mean, that's where I went with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No wonder. Like, so that's where I'm going to lean straight in and go, oh, so if I tell you I'm confused at why you think I'm yelling, it makes it sound like I think you're crazy. Yeah, no, I don't think you're crazy at all.
Yeah,
Right. So then
yeah,
I'm going to grab that and lean right in.
yeah. Well, and like it's interesting because I had a situation with this, with a friend. So this is not just about your primary relationships.
Oh,
This is
no.
good people skill stuff. And there
Totally.
was something I said pushed a massive trigger point with this person, and like there was a massive reaction. Like it wasn't a little reaction, there was a massive reaction. And I'm sitting here going like, what the heck happened, And
Right.
so, we did repairs. And like you were saying, like I didn't take ownership that I was trying to intentionally hurt this person. I listened, I was asked, am I willing to listen? And here I said, absolutely, anyway. So it was like, I feel like we did a really good job of hearing each other. And I said, yeah, I am sorry that pushed on that pain point for you. That was not my intention. But I can see how painful that is for you. So I wasn't taking responsibility for, I'm trying to do this to you and I'm trying to, wreck everything. And I said, I hear that particular phrasing, and that's what it really was. It came down to how I said something. My ask was legit, but how I said it came off on something that was very triggering for him. And
Yeah.
so we had I said, I hear you, and I honor that you're sharing this with me, and I will work really hard on not using wording like that would be problematic. And like it was so good because we were both willing to hear and navigate. And I didn't get defensive. I wasn't going, well, it worked really good. So I'm telling you, if you're willing to do this and practice on people that are not your primary, like, to if you need to, but this stuff really helps. Like we feel like we're in a really good place in our friendship now rather than being at odds. So it's helpful. I could have gotten defensive, I could have gone down that hole, and it wouldn't have been helpful for either of us. I don't like discomfort in relationships, and so I work hard on repairing them when I can. So not all
Yeah.
of them can be.
It's such a tricky thing because sometimes when we're hurt, we want people to own that they meant to hurt us. Like, because it's going to feel so good to know that they recognize that they hurt us, they meant to do it, and that, like, they're really sorry. And I wish life was that cut and dry, right? Like, and so but it's interesting because trying to teach people that the most important thing really is acknowledging that the person hurts and you can see why they are hurting. It's and that's why sometimes we apologize too quickly. Oh my gosh, you're upset, you're hurting, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's my fault. I did it. I'm really sorry. Let me just make your pain go away so that we're good. And it's like, no, there are times where it's more important to spend the time to really hash out what is it that's hurting and why. I'm not going to apologize until I understand what in the world is happening here.
And you're right. And that's exactly what happened. And
With
like
your
my connection
friend.
to this person is deeper, honestly, because we were both
Yes.
willing to step into the vulnerability, you know?
Yes, but that's a hard thing to do. One, because I just am uncomfortable and I want your complaining to go away, right?
Hmm.
Or I want your hurt to go away. And that's what I call over accountability. And sometimes, especially when you have like that whole betrayed partner, addict partner relationship, is that sometimes it becomes this the addict, if you will, takes a step down. I'm responsible for everything. Every problem we've ever had is all my fault. I'm the bad guy. I'm less than. And it's like, no, over accountability does not help. We need to stay equal in the relationship, and own our parts,
Hmm.
which, sometimes I think it feels really good if there's over accountability. Well, you've been under accountable for so long, right? But it doesn't actually help the relationship grow if there's over accountability. So learning how to get into that space, help me understand your hurt, is so important. But it also means um essentially you have to sit in your hurt for longer while we figure out why you're in pain. I
but
did a
but yeah, and
Go ahead.
I was thinking, and like you want the pain to go away, and I'm like, I like my absolute go-to would be just dismiss relationship. This, like I just don't need this. Yeah, I just don't need this, with a little drama flair, and I'm like, but that's not who I want to be, and I don't want to just cut and run, when things get messy, and I learn more about myself, and I also learn more, and I get more connected. If I'm willing to do this messy work, I get to
Right.
be more connected with people, and they matter more to me. I mean, it's, like I've got a deeper connection with them. So I'm willing, to do the messy work, and I was thinking like this was, we both showed up as our adults, like neither of
Right.
us
In
were,
that situation
stomping
with
our
your friend.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it like it honestly was one of those meaningful things that I'm like, if nothing else good happened this week, it was a mess, but man, oh man, the cleanup was, was worth it. So, yeah.
Yeah. It
So
it's tricky too, because I remember I don't even remember what the circumstance was, but I remember Troy talking to me. I was at the Finding Peace retreat with him one time, and one of the participants had come up to me and had felt injured by something that I said or did. I can't remember. I honestly don't even remember the circumstance. And Troy told me
it was
later
your
that
socks.
it was probably my son. and
Sorry.
and no, it's funny. And Troy said later that the person came up to him and said it felt really good to have Matt apologize. And Troy said he didn't apologize. This kind of cracked me up, because then this person was so mad. You're right. He didn't apologize. And the thing is that one, I don't know. I don't remember the circumstance, but I remember, like, I do this all the time where I don't apologize because I'd rather understand what your hurt and pain is. And if I can acknowledge that, most of the time, that's all people really feel. That's what they really want. If I apologize, maybe there's times where I'm feeling like, well, if I were to apologize, it's me saying, I did that on purpose. I'm really sorry. I didn't realize it would hurt, like, or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes, even in an apology, all the person really wants is just to be seen, just to be
Well,
felt and understood.
and the I'm sorry can be trite and a toss off,
That's how I
like it's
feel.
like I'm sorry, and
Yeah.
continue on, and there's no repair, and there's no, I hear you, and like I said with this one, like I will be very intentional about using, I won't, I will make sure that I'm not using words that could be felt as, as hurtful to this particular person. So like lesson learned for me too. So you said you had more content on this. We have a question. Let me quick check this, but you had more content on this because this is really interesting too. Own our part feels like victim blaming. Every single time I address conflict or a need with curiosity and compassion, my spouse wants to blame me for his defensiveness. I can use every Gottman communication and I feel statement, and he always responds with my needs or a valid complaint and only interprets that as a personal attack. I can say everything right and in the right tone, and he will want me to take responsibility for my part of triggering his reaction. Oh, there's so much
No.
here. Yeah.
Oh no, in fact, I love this response.
Yeah.
What I would say is, it sounds like he is victim blaming, if that makes any sense. Like he's using that phrase as a weapon, right? Like, one of the things we learn, and you're right, I always struggle when I try to teach concepts. I always try and tell, people that I'm teaching, like, this isn't about getting it perfect or saying things right. It's about understanding the much bigger picture. And so, um, if I were to come up with an example, and I'm trying to, because I'm looking at what you're saying here. Every time I address conflict or need with curiosity and compassion, my spouse wants to blame me for his defensiveness. And I think in that situation, like even if I were to use the concept, I would say, you know, partner, spouse, I can see that when I try to address conflict or a need with you, regardless of how I bring it to you, I can see that it triggers your defensiveness. I'm willing to own that I care about you and our relationship so much that I'm trying to connect with you. And if it's clear to me, I can see that me asking you to meet a need brings up a defensiveness in you, and that you and I aren't able to go any further in connecting, right? I don't know that I can, like, I can't own your reaction of being defensive, but I can totally see my part in wanting to connect with you, in wanting to get curious and share a need, and how that seems to get shut down with defensiveness. And that makes me sad. That makes me lonely. I'm nervous that if we can't figure out how to get past this, that that we are going to stay disconnected, and that's sad for both of us, right? Like if you hear the way that I'm doing that, yeah, I'm owning that me coming to you with a need and trying to address conflicts brings up defensiveness. I can own that all day long, but I'm saying what I'm actually owning is that I'm trying to get close to you and I love you. Now, can we have a conversation about when I try to get close to you and try to connect with you, that brings up defensiveness? Help me understand that. And he might shut that right down because you're now getting more vulnerable. And he might be like, peace out. I don't want to do vulnerability. At which point I'm like, okay, how long can you do a relationship without vulnerability? It's really, really difficult. I would argue that there's no blaming here. You have every right to have a need, and you have every right to want to get curious and get connection with your spouse. And it sounds like, I might say, hey, help me understand, what am I hitting your shame? Am I hitting pain for you when I try to get close? Tell me more about that. But again, I can't ever guarantee that any of these techniques or methods are going to get connectedness, because he might never be willing. Tammy, what are your thoughts as I walk through
I'm
that?
sad because I'm thinking this is a person who is absolutely shutting you down. Like, like you're
Yeah.
trying all these different ways, you're using the Gottman thing, and this person is, I mean, like that's a hard pushback, and the self-centered, quite frankly, me. I'm the victim here. When if you're the betrayed partner, guess what? The behaviors that the other person did are the pain points. That's what has really caused fracture in the relationship. And you are, just like Matt said, you are going like, hey, can we connect here? And it's so yeah, getting professional help to identify this. But I was thinking, so we mentioned Troy, and I should have asked how many people were new to this group and things, but his very good friend, Troy Love, and my friend too, but his really good friend, Troy Love, Troy does the attachment wounds and the Voices of Shame webinars on the fourth Wednesday of the month with us. So they're previously recorded. He also does drop-in groups, but he talks about those attachment wounds and, you know, those voices of shame, how they show up, you know, differently. Dr. Eddie Caparucci, you know, does inner child. We've got an inner child online work group starting next week. Really good, you know, talking about all the little kids that we have and how they show up and how they hijack our adult brain. And so we show up and we have a little tantrum, you know, because that, and it's all defensive, but it, you know, and it's to protect us, and it pushes everybody away. It protects us so good that we're disconnected. So, and the unfortunate part is at some point partners go, yeah, I just don't, you know, I can't, like Matt said, you can't always be in a relationship where you're disconnected. You know, that isn't healthy. You know, I share often, Dr. Stan Tatkin did a podcast with Dr. Rob January of 2019, I actually looked it up, called We Do. And I love it because it's like, in a healthy relationship, we are, you know, are against the world, not me, which is what addicts, you know, do. And so, and partners are like, I'm trying to fix the relationship. And addicts are going, me. You're hurting me. I'm the victim. No, you know, if we're focusing on what's good for the relationship, we're each better, you know. And I know addicts can turn that and manipulate that. Well, it'd be good for our relationship partner if you did whatever. No, it's like, really, you know, we have to learn to grow up in, you know, I get it, maladaptive coping mechanisms. I get all of that kind of stuff. But at some point, you know, we have to choose to live differently and not hang on to, you know, in the 12 step it talks, you know, hanging on to the old ideas, you know, and the result is nil until we let go. Absolutely. We have to turn around and live a different way, and we can, but it, you know, healthy. So here's where I go with this all the time: healthy boundaries for you. You know, it's, if there's unacceptable behavior, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to take care of me. You know, I see that that's what you're doing, and, you know, I'm going to go take care of me, and we can try this again. But, you know, but go ahead, please.
I want to speak to the, I mean, we can be done with this question, but
No,
almost
please.
the very last thing that was said, I can say everything right and in the right tone. I hear like desperation, like, and
Yes.
like fatigue. I have
Yeah.
tried no matter what I do. And I'm actually telling you, I want you to own your part in triggering his reaction, because think about this. If you own your part, what you're owning is, I love you so much that I keep trying to get close to you, and it triggers this negative reaction in you. So yes, own that beautiful part of you that is trying to get close, even if he's not letting you. But don't own it as in there's something wrong with me for triggering his negative reaction, right? There's
Right.
nothing wrong with you. Like, it's with, in some situations, no matter how hard I try, no matter how well intentioned I am, and how beautiful my intentions are, some people can't figure out how to not make it negative. And so, yes, own your part, but be proud of it. It's beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
because you keep trying to connect and he doesn't know how. He's got to figure that out. And you can be patient and loving and kind while he figures that out for as long as you can. But be proud of triggering that part, because it's this amazing part of you trying to connect with whatever amazing parts of him are there. And he's like, it's too scary. I can't do it. So absolutely take responsibility, but don't be ashamed of it. Be proud.
Well, and I was thinking too with my friend situation. My friend said something about, you know, not wanting to trigger me, and I said, I hear you, and you know, if like with me, I don't want to do something that is intentionally hurtful to this person. But on the other hand, I was like, my triggers are for me to deal with. It's like, I have tools, and I need to go to my coping skills, my people that I can talk to. Like, I need to take care of me and my triggers, because, you know, how would anybody ever know the landmine of triggers that anybody has, because everybody's triggers are
Seriously.
different, you
Oh,
know.
totally.
So yeah, so
I'm
understanding that. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm very careful and very well skilled, and I accidentally hit people's stuff all the time. In fact, I'm okay with it because it's just
Yeah,
part of the process.
yeah.
I'm not trying to walk the landmine of how to not hurt people. I'm just prepared when I do. And I do all the time in therapy. I do all the time at home and with my friends. Like, oh, I hit your pain. I hit your wound. Well, tell me about it. I'll just be
Mm-hmm.
ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so the next question is addict in recovery for 18 months, CSAT sponsored and working the steps. Great. Where is the balance between sharing my feelings and being needy? Oh, that's a great question. I've
Oh my
rediscovered
goodness.
my feelings in recovery. Yes, welcome to those, and find it helpful to share with my wife. When she doesn't respond like I think I want her to, I feel like she either doesn't care or I'm burdening her. I know my happiness comes from within, but sometimes I need her to see and hear me. That's a great question.
Oh, it's a beautiful question. So I'll work it a little bit backwards. You
Please.
say you know your happiness comes from within, but sometimes I need her just to I just need her to see and hear me. Well, of course, we all need to be heard and seen. That is definitely a need that we have. However, and this, I mean, we got plenty of time, so I'll just break it down.
Hmm.
When people talk about being too needy, I always cringe a little bit. And I cringe because I'm going to suggest to you that there's no such thing as being too needy. But I will talk to what you really mean. Why is it there's no such thing as being too needy? Well, there's no such thing as being too thirsty. You can drink too much water and actually die, but you're usually have fulfilled the thirst need, if that makes sense. So there's no such thing as being too needy. If your need is met, then you're good. The problem that most of us have, and I'll give you a personal example. For many years, as I was continuing to do my own work, I put a burden on my wife that I didn't even understand. And the
Hmm.
burden I put on her was I needed her to tell me and to show me that I was lovable because
Hmm.
I didn't feel lovable. I felt like I wasn't good enough. I didn't measure up. I mean, you name it. I didn't make enough money. I wasn't funny enough. I wasn't smart enough. Like, come up with anything. It wasn't enough. And it's what I truly felt about myself. And I remember reaching a point in my relationship where my wife was kind of like, she could have said, "You're too needy." And ultimately, it's what she was saying, right? And the issue I had was I was asking her to meet an unfillable need because
Hmm.
I thought I needed her to reinforce to me that I was lovable. And I didn't realize that that was a need I needed to believe about myself. No matter how much she tried to reinforce it, it was never going to be enough. It was insatiable. Because until I believed it about myself, I couldn't accept enough love to fill that hole. And so in that case, I was too needy because I wasn't actually going after the right need. I needed to learn to love myself before I could accept her or anyone else's love. And so if we are trying to get somebody else to meet a need that we actually have to fill within ourselves, um, it looks and feels too needy and it depletes people around us. And in my particular case, I actually had to go to my wife at one point and say, when I come to you for reassurance, when you perceive that I need reassurance, don't give it to me.
Oh, wow.
And it was because I knew I needed to have conversations and talk with her. But if she gave me reassurance, you're good enough, you're smart enough, whatever it is that I was looking for, I could easily soak that in. Now, I was the one that had to figure that out, right? Like, be careful here because if you're like, my partner needs too much reassurance from me, I'm going to not give them any. Like,
Mhm.
you could cause an earthquake within the other person, but you could talk about this concept, you could have them watch this video. But in this case, I actually kind of went to my wife and said, "Hey, I need you to hear me, but don't give me reassurance." And so when you said in your question, sometimes I just need her to hear and see me. I'm going to challenge you. Figure out within yourself, are you needing her to see and hear you, or are you needing her to reassure you? Because in the example of me going to my wife and let's say I'm really struggling with some work related issues and I'm just not feeling good enough. And if she says to me, "Oh, it's going to be okay, honey. You're good enough. You're smart enough." And I'm like, "Oh, that feels good." Or if she's like, yeah, it's kind of stressful and I can see that you're working hard and having a hard time. What else? Tell me more. And if she sees and hears me, I'm like, wow, she really understands the stress I'm going through. But she doesn't reassure me, then it's like, oh, I can reassure myself. Like, I'm not alone in this. She's here with me. She cares about me. Um, she hears and sees me without trying to fill my void. And so then I'm like, oh, I can reassure myself. I can recognize that I'm good enough. I don't need everyone around me to heap praise on me so that I feel good for a flash. And so you might want to explore to answer this question, because the question really is, where's the balance between sharing my feelings and being needy? Most of the time when we're sharing our feelings, we just need somebody to be with us, not to solve it, not to reassure us, not to make us feel better, but just to know that we're not alone. So I'm going to encourage you, ask yourself, maybe she's giving me reassurance or something when really I just need to know I'm not alone. And you might have to tell her that. Just, can you just tell me I'm not alone and that you hear and understand me without trying to make me feel better? Because that might be where no amount of her trying to make you feel better is going to fill that need. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Tammy, is there anything else on that?
Yeah, and I mean, like I remember the rediscovering emotions, and it was a lot, and like I didn't know what to do with them and all that. But here's the other thing: it's like, you know, are there other? You have a CSAT, you have a sponsor. Are there other people that you can, discuss these, re-emerging feelings with, so that you're checking in
Well,
with other people, have more
I
support.
I didn't even address that feeling. I've rediscovered my feelings in recovery. I wonder, are you sharing feelings or are you sharing thoughts? Um,
Oh,
and,
good.
and,
Yeah.
because we all do that, right? I'll go to my wife and I'll say to her, I'm feeling frustrated because I just don't feel like you appreciate what I'm doing. And, no matter how hard I work, like, let's say I say that, I'm like, oh, I'm sharing my feelings. No, no, I'm sharing a bunch of thoughts and ideas that to her sound like I'm complaining about her. If I were to share my feelings, it would be more, I'm recognizing that I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling unappreciated. I'm feeling like my efforts don't matter. And I'm trying to figure out, am I blaming you for those? Or am I taking responsibility for those struggles that I'm having? Right now, I'm having a conversation with her about my emotions and the thoughts that I'm having instead of like telling her accidentally, this is your fault that I feel this way. And I see a lot of people do that. Oh, I'm rediscovering my feelings. Actually, you're discovering for the first time you have needs, and you're probably just terrible at communicating them like most of us are.
But you also have other people. So like finding the balance,
Right.
yeah,
Don't put it all on your wife.
no, but like the Fanos check-in, those are great. There's great places to you share feelings and then it's both of you sharing. So making sure that it's both of you sharing, journaling. There's all kinds of research on how journaling, because then you know what, you will actually get to those feelings instead of just the thoughts and like all of that stuff. You actually can get through that, and do it with writing, not on a typewriter. Typewriter, that's so old, on a keyboard. Yeah, I know I said it. But anyway, but it's not typing it. It is writing it, because as you're journaling, you're
Yeah,
going to
right.
find out what's really going on. Yeah, it really, but I love what Matt was saying. Explore it. Like, what is this really going on? And I think it's fair to ask your wife, like, this is what it feels like to me. Is it, tell me what it feels like to you. And when I share feelings, just have a conversation, ask, be vulnerable and ask. But good job on doing 18 months and having a sponsor. You're doing the steps. That's good stuff. And steps, you said, I'm working the steps. So steps 4 through 9 are the heart of this, is where the cleanup is. And the more you do, when you get through those, there's a huge relief on that. You're going to appreciate the dropping the burden on that. So, okay. So when my PA says I don't have an addiction, I ask my PA, why then did you continue to devastate me with such pain when I begged you for months to stop? And he says to me, no matter what I say, it's just wrong. And he never talks to me at all for a year now since discovery. He has never acknowledged any wrongdoing, no recovery at all. So that's more of a statement. I don't see a question in
Well,
there.
I'm
So
trying to, if I were to, it's an interesting
there's a
thing.
lot of pain here. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
lots of pain. It's interesting. Um, Sometimes I don't love how much emphasis is placed on addiction or not an addiction. And in fact, I actually, because I worry sometimes that we come in swinging, you're an addict. And if they say I'm not an addict, it's as if it's like this feeling that, well, then you didn't harm me. And the funny part is it's like, man, whether he's an addict or not, he caused a lot of pain. And so I'm like, well, let's throw the addiction out the window for a second. What if we just focus on the pain? Um, because it's interesting, like, like if you look at like the clinical definition of alcoholism, for instance, right? Like you don't have to be an alcoholic to like hurt your family with an unhealthy use of alcohol. And really that's the key in this statement is there's pain there and he's not addressing it. I actually would probably lean into tell me more, again, either as a partner, or if I'm the therapist sitting across from him, like, hey, like, tell me why you shut down when she tries to ask you about the hurt, when she tries to get understanding of the wrongdoing. Like, tell me why you shut down and pull away so much. Like, and most likely it's his shame in some way, and we're never going to get to a place where he could sit in her pain unless that shame is addressed. And it's kind of that the tragedy of this work feels every time to me when I'm working with a couple where one of them has hurt the other, it's like, well, we have to focus on the one who did the hurting to get them healthy enough so that they can lean into the partner's pain. So, partner, you have to wait longer, wait, until he can show up for you in his pain. I'm always like, oh, I hate that part of it. But the truth is you often do have to go to the person who has the most shame, unblock that before we can get to the other person. And that's what it sounds like is happening here. You're going to him with a lot of hurt and pain. You're begging him for some comfort in your pain, and you're doing that by saying, tell me why you did what you did, right? Like if you're an addict, that at least gives me some explanation and feels better to me. When the truth is like whether he's an addict or not, he did the behavior and it hurts. And that's what's actually important. But you're like begging for an explanation and he doesn't know how to respond. And so then he's not responding. And for a whole year, it sounds like he's not acknowledging the hurt and pain. Yeah, that's going to cause a lot of pain. I mean, the funny part is if even if he is doing recovery, even if he is figuring out how to stop the behavior or do other healthy behaviors and connect with people in a healthy way, it doesn't sound like he's making a repair with you. And so no matter how you look at it, it's going to be like, well, I don't see any recovery, not in our relationship anyway. And so, yeah, I hear a ton of pain as to why you'd want some acknowledgement and why it feels like he's dismissing that. And you're just saying, can you just acknowledge that I hurt? And I would agree. You need that acknowledgement. And it's sad that he doesn't know how to show up for you. Other than that, I'm not sure what else to speak to on
Yeah, I
this.
mean, I always talk about healthy boundaries, and so what do you need to do to take care of you, regardless of what he's doing or not doing? But yeah, when somebody's that shut down, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, you can't have a conversation by yourself. well, I can, but but it's like one of those things where, like, yeah, if he is and I hate when you said, and he just says to me, no matter what I say, it's wrong, well, so and that is another defensive move. So like, I'm not going to say anything because whatever I say is wrong. And so I'm just going to ignore all of this and hope that you stop talking about this at some point,
Right, which
and that we
is
could just move on with our merry life,
which we will talk about stonewalling in our next I mean, we could go there now, but like, we could talk about stonewalling, but it really is a defense mechanism that like just basically says I'm out. And it's not fair. It feels miserable. Like, who wants to be in a relationship where we have no connection? Like, most of us, that's not a relationship, right? That's where it feels like, man, it'd be better to be alone than be in this.
Well, and
And
that podcast that I referenced earlier, Dr. Stantakin talks about that. You're better alone than you are in an unhealthy relationship. Physically, like, your health is compromised. I mean, all kinds of things. And so,
yeah,
why would we not? I say this to the addicts. Why would we not want to strive for joy and happiness and health? And all, I know it sounds minimal, but or big or whatever, but all we have to do is be willing and make progress to this. Like, we aren't going to do it perfectly to start with, but if we're willing, we can make progress, and that helps us heal that gap, in a relationship. And then guess what? As well as our partner, but we get the benefits of being in a healthy relationship and having, connection and joy, which is, I mean, all of this stuff we talk about all the time is, as human beings, we are built for connection and, in a real and meaningful way. All of these questions where it's, I want to be heard and seen, that's, I want connection, is being heard and seen.
yeah, it's tragic. It really is. So that's where I try and encourage people, like, you can focus on you, focus on other healthy relationships, just try and get yourself in a healthier space and hope they come along. Um, it's really difficult when it feels like only one partner is doing the work to just keep going. And sometimes it just feels unjust. Like, I'm the one that got hurt. Why am I the one that's continuing to do the work? And part of it is, one, what else are you gonna do? Like, are you just gonna stay unhealthy yourself, right? Like, most of us are like, no, I've got to figure out how to get healthy, right? Just for my own sake. And sometimes as we do so, it moves our partner along. Like, they can't usually stay stuck. But um, what ends up happening is that they either get worse and then the relationship's terminated, or they do slowly get better. And that's, every person has to figure out um, how to lean in to getting healthy and decide, do I keep moving forward? Not easy, but
No.
we've all got to figure that out.
Yeah, and everybody's path is different. So, like, please hear, there's no judgment at all on any of this. We actually have groups both for female betrayed partners called Moving On Alone on Thursdays, and on Fridays there's a group for men, at Moving On Alone, and those are for people who have been left, or as I say, have 1.5 feet out the door. So you're not looking to repair the relationship necessarily. So consider those are free drop-in groups. Check those out on our site. So everybody makes their choice. It's everybody's journey. So, okay, Matt, the next one. How do you deal with a spouse who weaponizes therapy talk? For example, if I set boundaries for self-care, he will call it stonewalling.
This one, I'm sorry, it just made me laugh. It kind of cracks me up. So interestingly enough, I do see that occasionally in recovery work, especially when a partner is first learning boundaries, boundaries end up becoming consequences and punishments. And I'm going to assume here for a moment that's not what's happening, that this is healthy self-care and it's not a punishment, it's not a consequence. Um, and I would say in that situation, he calls it stonewalling. I'm going to ask, So I'm curious, like, tell me why you feel stonewalled. Tell me more about how it feels to you. So I decide that I'm going to go take a walk and have a breather and figure out to take a moment to myself, regulate, maybe call a friend. Can you help me understand why that feels like stonewalling? Right? Well, you are abandoning me. Oh, so I'm hitting your pain. So when I go take a walk, get a breather, stabilize myself, call my friend, and then I come back and say, "Hey, let's talk." To you that feels like stonewalling, but really what's happening is you're trying to tell me that you're hurting and you're in pain, and you're using the word stonewalling to try and describe it. Oh, so do I need to, so every time I'm hearing you say stonewalling, do I just need to hear that you're in pain? Right? Like I'm literally just going to use it to go, help me understand your definition of stonewalling. Now, if I take that on and be like, oh, how dare you? I'm not stonewalling. Like, okay, now I'm getting defensive. And I would just be like, what's that line from Princess Bride? Like, I do not think that means what you think it means. Like I'm almost going to pull that maneuver, like stonewalling. I do not think that means what you think it means. Like, help me understand what stonewalling means to you. I'm enjoying a walk. Like, I'm going and taking some time and getting grounded so that I'm not mean or rude. Like, so help me understand why that's stonewalling to you. I didn't realize it was that painful. I'm gonna lean straight into that. And it sucks, right? When we feel like something that's created so much peace and safety, like recovery work and therapy language, it's like helped us to feel so much better. And somebody's like, "You're doing this," and we're like, "No, I'm not." But if we can not be defensive, we can actually use it to be like curious.
Mhm,
Stonewalling, eh? Teach me more.
mhm.
Not
Yeah,
easy to
I love
do,
the
but totally
no,
doable.
but I love the being curious because and it also engages your this part of your brain instead of the reaction. Like
Yeah.
because I then I'm paying attention and I'm engaged, and so it helps me regulate emotions too. So okay, I'm the addict in recovery. I'm also a betrayed partner. When my partner is triggered and pulls away, my betrayal wounds get hit, and we just can't show up for each other. How can we overcome this and move towards reconnection? That's a great question.
Um, no, it's fantastic. I'm gonna give you a simple answer. I think we sometimes need to accept that our wounds getting hit is normal. I don't know, like let's assume for a moment that for the rest of our lives we're gonna hit each other's wounds. How do we show up for each other? Sometimes it's by I'm gonna go take a walk and call a friend. And once I've regrounded, I'm gonna come back and speak to your wounds. And I'm glad you showed me. And I'm gonna try to own it and be accountable for as much as I can, which was as much as would be healthy. I'm gonna ask you in a time where we're not stirred up. Tell me more about your wounds. Help me understand when I hit your wounds, what's really happening for you, right? Like the issue, it feels like a lot of times is too many people only address issues when the issues are on fire. And I'm like, man, get in a better place.
Mhm,
Bring up the conversation when things are good. And people are like,
mhm,
but why would I want pain when things are good? And I'm like, because so often that's where healing occurs. But
mhm.
it does take the discomfort of, I might hit your wounds by bringing this up. Can we try? Right? It's not easy at all, but that would be my recommendation on overcoming and moving towards reconnection is that sometimes we have to take the break and revisit it later, revisit it with empathy. Sometimes I'm calling a friend going, I have zero empathy for my wife right now. You got to help me. And
Mhm.
in talking to that friend, I'm able to get empathy, bring it back, and then have empathy for my wife once I'm in a better place.
But I love what Matt said too about having a plan, like, and even having a plan of, so you guys know this happens. Like, this happens. So having the plan of the next time this happens, and you probably know your body responses. Pay attention to that. Like I get a knot in my stomach, or some people get like the tight chest, whatever it is, whatever you start to feel. I'm starting to feel that I'm starting to escalate, like I'm starting to escalate with this. Can we take a time out? I'm going to go ground. I'm not abandoning if that's one of the wounds, I'm going to come back in 20 minutes. I always say, set the timer, so that it isn't 40 minutes, come back and check it. Can we talk about this now? But having the plan for when this happens, it's going to happen. So having the plan for when this happens so that you can try doing something different, and hopefully get a different reaction. I think it's also, I love scheduled times so that this isn't happening, 24/7, but having scheduled times to talk about, we seem to get stuck on these little points. Can we problem solve together? Can we mutually work on having an idea of something we could try that could be different, so we don't just repeat the same patterns that we have been, that haven't gotten you anywhere, except kind of stuck. So but great question. Okay, next question, and the last question. So I would love to talk about stonewalling, which it sounds like that's going to be in 2 weeks. You will be doing that, because every single time I set boundaries about conversations that have turned into abusive cycles of blame, defensiveness, and lack of accountability, I am accused of stonewalling. If he can't control the how he wants to have the conversation and when he wants to have it, I am blamed for stonewalling. But I can't even address anything with him without it turning into an abusive cycle. Again, having the scheduled time, then it's you guys mutually agree that we're having a 20-minute conversation, and it's not 19 minutes for one and 1 minute for the other. So
Yeah, that certainly can help. Interestingly enough, this has nothing to do with stonewalling. What this has to do with is he has a certain feeling or emotion, and the word he's using to describe that discomfort is stonewalling, which is to say you are doing this thing, right? And so the truth is, like, he doesn't know either how to get more vulnerable and figure out what he's actually experiencing, right? So uh, as we get healthier, we start to say, okay, I'm feeling stonewalled, even though that may not be what you're doing. But this is that moment where I'm trying to open up and share what's going on inside of me. And it feels like you're shutting me down. And so I'm hurt and I'm angry and I want to blame you. But I know if I do that, that's going to shut you down even worse. And so I'm trying to get close to you and I'm having these feelings that I don't understand, and I'm wanting your help and I'm wanting to be close. And I don't know what else to call it, but stonewalling. Can you help me figure out what is happening between us? Right? That would be a vulnerable way for him to express what, as far as I can tell, that's what he's saying to you. So oddly enough, what I hear you asking in this question is, Matt, can you give me an understanding of stonewalling so that I can stop feeling crazy, because I'm not stonewalling him. And so what you're asking me to do is like, here, let me give you the evidence that shows you're not stonewalling so that you can go slap him with it. And like, really, you're like, please help me not feel crazy. And I'm like, listen, you're not crazy, right? But it really isn't even about stonewalling. It's about, like, and you call it an abusive cycle. Like, it's about that negative cycle that you've dropped into, where as soon as he doesn't get his need met, he doesn't know how to describe that deficit. He tells you you're stonewalling, you're frustrated because you're like, no, I'm not. And now we're in an argument about verbiage.
yeah.
But really you're just sitting there going, I now feel crazy. I'm feeling like
Yeah.
I'm being told this is my fault. And that sucks for you. That's a
Yeah.
horrible feeling to have.
So, and
So
I encourage you. How we have an empowered women's retreat, and like I know how helpful that is for the women that participate in that. It's where it's coming up March 8th through 10th, and we're going to be in Austin, Texas, and like I mean, even the other facilitators learned more. It was so good, and I think you would feel. I think you would feel some healing, for this, and you would know you're not crazy. It is a crazy making, when that kind of stuff keeps happening, but consider that. We also have the Betrayed Partner online work group that starts on the 21st, and that talks about healthy boundaries and, lots of other techniques and things, and lots of resources on our website, the Betrayed Partner drop-in groups, other webinars, Dr. Robin, our clinical director, Erin Snow, alternate on Mondays, but we have the series on Wednesday mornings. Lots of resources to support you and help you feel tethered, like when all of this kind of crazy stuff is happening. So please lean into all of those. So, and Matt will talk about stonewalling in 2 weeks, because that'll be the fourth horseman. So,
Let's do
okay.
it.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everybody. Great questions. Appreciate you being here. Bye.
See ya.